Hello, I'm Jacques Halbronn, and I would like to talk with you about the tarot and the cards. I'm very much interested by someone who might know, who is very often mentioned by historians of the tarot. His name is Attila, and he lived in the second part of the 18th century in France. He has tried to reform the tarot deck, following the work of Cour de Gébelin and his Monde Primitif, which was published in 1781, something like that, the year Uranus was discovered by an English man from Hanoverian origin called William Herschel. And he tried to understand the structure of the tarot. He tried to understand the succession of the arcanas, of the cards. What was the logic which puts this card after this card? He invites us to think about it, not to take things as granted. In 1983, I published a book which hasn't been translated into English. It's called Les Mathématiques Divinatoires. And it is an attempt to study the structure, a critical attempt to study the structures of different divinatory knowledges. And I have made such a number of proposals, and I would like to introduce now a new scheme concerning the tarot, which I started to develop after rereading Attila, to whom I dedicated already a book in 1993, 20 years ago. What I want to prove here is that there are not, what you call it also, trams, I think, trams. There are not 22 trams, but 24. Because 22 is not divided by 4, like 24 it is. And in the system of the card, everything goes by 4. You have 4 suits, clubs, etc., spades, and you have also 4 honors. We would like in French honors, maybe it's not the right translation in English. King, queen, valet, and also cavalier, chevalier. And as you probably know, the chevalier, the horsemen, have disappeared from the 32 cards deck, and it has been replaced by the aces. The aces being not very important by themselves. Originally, it's just 1. It comes, and after 1 there is 2 and 3. So the aces have occupied the place of the cavaliers for some reason, so that you still have 4 honors in the 32. 4 honors by suit for each of the 4 suits. 4 honors multiplied by 4, it gives 16. And you have also 16 minor cards in the 32. You divide 32 by 2, you have 16. 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay? So, according to me, as an historian and a specialist of the history of the documents and the text, it is obvious that we have here in the 32 cards, two groups of 16, major, minor. And in fact, the tarot is an extension of this 32 system, passing from 32 to 48. But in fact, we only have 46 now. Since I said before, we have only 22 major arcanas instead of 24. As a matter of fact, Etela had the intuition somehow that you had to have two more cards in order to reach 80. He has proposed extra cards that he would call them actually etelas. One for the man who consoles, and the one for the woman who consoles about their destiny. How do I prove that? If you count how many minor, so you have two groups of minor cards. Yeah? The first group, which belongs to the 32 pack of 16, and then you have 6, 5, 4, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, which corresponds to, if you pass from 36 to 78, you have 40. If you pass from 42 to 78, you have 46 cards, extra cards. Yes. If you divide, if instead of 46 you say 48, you have twice 24. Okay. So you have a group of 24 major arcana instead of 22, and a group of 24 minor arcana, which are added to the 16 minor cards we had in the 32 cards pack. And the problem is that instead of having 24 major honors, femmes, you have only 22. While on the other side you have really the 24 minor arcanas by added to the 16 originally minor cards. So you have a dissymmetry of two cards, which is quite obviously a problem and a dysfunction. So I say, since apparently the minor arcanas are divided in 4 groups, spades, clubs, etc., it is supposedly the same thing with the major arcana. The honors are also divided in 4 groups. The 4 kings, the four queens, etc. So it is to be supposed reasonably that the 22 cards of the major arcanas are to be divided in 4 groups. Maybe the 4 groups are connected with the 4 virtues, as it tells said. 4 virtues: prudence, tempérance, justice, force, fortitude. It's just a possibility. I haven't solved the problem at this level. I just opened some horizons. It's a fact that Etela said you have to concentrate on these 4 virtues. And actually, one of the virtues, the care of prudence, is not called like that anymore. and it has been replaced, according to Cour de Geblin and Etella, by the hanged man. They connect the idea of the hanged man with the idea of prudence. When you reverse it, the hanged man is having his foot on a snake or something like that. But it's only a track. What I want to say is the research on the tarot in the future has to discover how the 22 major trumps are organized, and also, of course, to discover the 2 missing arcanas. Whereas what they were, what has become of them, did we keep them somehow in some place? Or can we reconstitute from the structure of the whole system what they had to be? It's also a possibility. See? The French school of esotericism is very much marked by this approach of reconstitution of the tradition. Not only with the tarot, but also with astrology, concerning, for instance, what we call in English the rulerships. It's the number of books which have been dedicated to a reconstitution, a restructuration of the rulerships in French is enormous. And when I started astrology at the end of the 60s, I was very much involved by this question and wrote a lot on this question. What was the right system? System which is all actually, by the way, already exposed by Ptolemy in the Tetrabiblos, in the book number 1, book 1. What is, he gives a key, he gives us an explanation. There's a double 2 signs for each planet apart from the light, from the lights, apart from the sun and moon. A lot to do about that, and what makes things more complicated is, of course, the idea of introducing the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the system. And this is also something very tricky, because why should we do that when it was not known in the antiquity? Why? Why should we integrate this new planet, and why should we speculate on discovery of 2 more planets beyond Pluto, which also today is not very considered as a possibility, since Pluto is not any longer totally, completely a planet in the same meaning as it is for Neptune and Uranus. It's a sort of nano-planet or exoplanet. Anyway, it has been said recently that a new planet has been discovered beyond Neptune or something. Well, anyway, there has been a lot of considerations and speculation about all this in astrology, and of course there's also the field about Nostradamus and the centuries. Can we determine what were the original centuries, etc.? It's also a complexity, because there were additions, there were transformations, changes, and things which have been touched, rebuilt, etc. So there is a great deal of work in rebuilding all this. And unfortunately, that was recently my conclusion in another speech in French, unfortunately all this attempt to rebuild the traditions, like Kepler, for instance, tried to do, but also like Abu Mazar in the Middle Ages tried to do, to reconstitute not only the form of the tradition, but also the spirit of the tradition. The Abu Mazar, for instance, by introducing the idea of a great conjunction Jupiter-Saturn, he was breaking a postulate according to which we should consider all the 120 conjunctions which are at this time existed, by affirming that astrology has not the necessity and the duty and the obligation to command and exploit all the planets and all the conjunctions which existed in astronomy. It's a matter of epistemology. And there's also something to build about that. Esotericism are not only to be rebuilt from the point of view of the perpetuation of its structures, but also of its letter, but also for the respect of its spirit.